Hello, writers. My name is Dr. Sarah Donovan. I'm Assistant Professor of English Education at Oklahoma State University and a board member at Oklahoma Council of Teachers of English. We're an affiliate of the National Council of Teachers of English, and we are here to support our writers and develop the 2021 Young Writers Contest anthology for grades 6 through 12. So today, I would like to talk to you about short story, 2,000 words, your short story. So I have a few tips for helping you out, developing your short story, bringing it into the hearts and minds of our anthology readers. So let's go. All right, so first I want to introduce you to the short story winners from the 2020 Young Writers Anthology. So we have Daisy Hiley, Zane Smith, Memphis Godwin, Leah Stallings, Madeline Ward, and Ethan Lee. And if you want to take a look at some of their examples, you can go to our anthology, which you can take a look at it right here. And you can see and read several of their short story entries here. So it's a really good idea whenever you're starting to write or you're thinking about submitting is to take a look at past winners, the structure, the topics, the stories, not necessarily to mimic or to duplicate those things, but to get a sense of what the judges might have been looking for. Also to get a sense of maybe how you want to mix it up and how you want to take a new angle or approach to it. So it's important just to take a look at some of the past winners before you start submitting the first. All right, so here's some criteria for the short story. So a short story, the subject matter for us is going to be aimed at readers 6 through 12. And so you might have some really great stories that might be for, slightly older readers or mostly high school readers. But I want you to keep in mind that for our purposes, the readers are going to be 6 through 12 and also adults. So keep in mind the content should be appropriate for a younger audience or middle school all the way through 12th grade. It's a brief piece of fiction, 2,000 words. Most fan fiction is under 1,000 words, so you might want to try that. It revolves around a single theme, a single climactic event, developing a single character in depth. So it's difficult to have many characters in a short story. It's narrower than a novel, so a short story contains the basic elements: character, setting, plot, conflict, resolution, climax, dialogue, protagonist, antagonist. Aren't you glad you know all those words because your teacher is so wonderful? All short stories need to be present the major character, typically with an important problem that they're struggling to solve and trying to engage the reader in caring about that character. And maybe at the beginning, we don't like the character all that much, but by the end, we care about them and we understand what's going on. Short stories can also be in a lot of different genres. So they can be fantasy, mystery, science fiction, historical, realistic. They can mix all those genres. So, give it a try and try to mix up the genres, mix up the plot, mix up the story order, even try a verse novel short story. That might be interesting. So let's get started. I think it's helpful to do a few quick writes, which you probably do some quick writes with your teacher. But it's helpful to do some quick writes. Maybe spend a few days doing 10 minutes of writing sprints. A lot of writers sit down and do 5 minutes of writing, 10 minutes of writing every day. And then after a while, you have a few things to select from. And here's a few story starters. So you can pause the video, do some writing, come back, or keep coming back to this video to try a different story starter every day. These are first sentences. You can see how it takes the reader right into a setting or right into the narrator situation. So icy fingers gripped my arms in the darkness. As she walked along the street, the tiny dragon in her pocket stirred restlessly. It was the last time I tried that. The loneliest day of her life was when, so right away you can see some are first and some are third person. The lions are a sign of courage. I'm glad I visited the zoo that morning. Now that's a great first line because already it gives you some symbolism for the lion. Light danced on the trees, a sign she would always be with us. So again, there's also this sort of metaphor and there's personification even in the first lines. So we get mood and we get a sense of narrator, all of that's happening right away. So after you write for a few days, it's really important to also consider looking at mentor text. So you don't have a lot of words when you're writing a short story. So sometimes you might start in the middle or start in the end and then fill the backstory in later with some dialogue. Look to some of your favorite authors for how they sort of started and then filled it in. So I'm just going to show you a couple of my favorites. This is Orbiting Jupiter. This is Orbiting Jupiter by Gary Schmidt, one of my favorites. So if you look at this first couple lines of here, before you agree to have Joseph come live with you, Mrs. Stroud said, there are one or two things you ought to understand. This is a great lead. It starts with dialogue, and we get a sense of the conflict or the problem right away. My mother looked at me for a long time, then she looked at my father, and now we also know there's some other characters involved. This one, the best at it. This lead is action with dialogue. We learn right away the voice of the narrator, and we meet several characters. Chelsea and I are playing Just Dance in the basement when my grandfather calls down the stairs. It's the last day of your vacation. You kids need to get out of the house. Maybe later, I yelled back up. So here we see some dialogue, and we see a little bit of setting, and we already see a grandfather. So you can get a sense that there's a relationship between the kid and the grandfather, and there's a best friend. So right away, we have some of the central characters just in the first couple lines. So there isn't a whole lot of time telling the backstory. We just jump right in. This is a great book, Refugee by Alan Gratz. It's historical fiction. So if you want to try a historical short story, it's really important to do your research. You want to make sure you have your facts straight and that you've done the research before you take on a historical narrator. But here we have Joseph, Berlin, Germany, 1938. Do you know what was going on at that time in Germany? Yeah, World War II. The early days of the Holocaust. So I'm sure you're studying some of that in your classes. But this one, look at the beginning. Crack, bang, Joseph Landau shot straight up in bed, his heart racing. That sound, it was like someone had kicked the front door or he had dreamed of it. This, if you're going to read further, I just want to let you know there's a lot of this is an emotional one. So if you get sensitive, I wouldn't read any further into this first page. But I want you to see at the beginning, what is that called? Onomatopoeia, that's right. And you have the first and last name of the character, and you have a setting, and his heart's racing, and there's a lot of action right at the beginning. Now we're really going to be scared about what's going to happen if you know a lot about this historical time period. You know it was really scary. So this is an important way to kind of start the story and bring us right into the action and the way that the main character is feeling. This one is a great book. I don't know if you've read Miss Bixby's Last Day by John David Anderson, but there's a strong statement in the first one. Rebecca Roundabush has cooties. It's kind of funny, and you get a sense of the narrator right away. I'm not making this up. We've run tests. She came up positive on the cootometer. All red, off the charts. See, making up words too. So you get a sense of the character right away, and you get right into it, into the scene, into the narrator, and again, we are getting a sense of the personality in the main setting. So look at your favorite books. Notice what they're doing for their mentor text for how you're going to begin your story. And there's a few more in here. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back. This is a great book too, Rick by Alex Gino. This is a third-person narrator. Rick Ramsey sat on the bedroom floor. Notice kind of like the refugee one. It says the first and last name, and there's a setting, and so you get right away get to know the character. This one starts with symbolism. It starts with setting. The dragonflies live down by the bayou, but there's no way to know which one's my brother. This is a really great book, and the main character had recently lost his brother, so he's very sad and grieving. But he looks to dragonflies and his setting in the bayou as symbols of his brother's ongoing existence, kind of memory of his brother's places where he likes to remember their relationship. It's also a place where he's trying to make sense of how he feels. And so you can see and hear this one begins with the setting, and that's a lovely way to begin a story too. So the key thing that I want you to think about as you're creating your short story is that you want to make sure that your story has a purpose, that the main character has something that they want, something that they need. Maybe if they don't even know that they want it yet, but something that the character wants or needs in their life. So King and the Dragonfly, the main character really wants to see his brother again, his healing, his grief, right? So you want to think, what does the main character want? In your story, what does the main character want? And then you have to create a situation where someone makes it difficult for them to get that, right? And that's where the conflict is. And then by the end, the character has it, or maybe a version of what they really want, and they've learned some sort of lesson. And that has to happen pretty quick. Like 500 words about what they want, 500 words about not getting it, 500 words about how they're resolving it. So I want you to take a look at a couple of these slides here that I think that they might be helpful. So what does your main character want? What's one thing that they have to have? It could be physical, it could be an idea, it could be status, whatever it is, it needs to be something your character feels will make his or her life better. Whether or not their feelings are true will be determined by how you end your story. For example, your character may believe that having millions of dollars is one thing that will make them truly happy, but your character may discover in the end that he'd rather have his family, whom he abandoned for riches. The character's goal is what drives the story forward. So what is trying to stop your character? Who or what is trying to stop your character? So a story is incomplete if the main character wants something and automatically gets it. That's not interesting. There has to be something inherently interesting to people about having to fight for what you want or trying to figure it out, the journey. So the obstacle to the goal provides the conflict and a drive for the story. The obstacle could be in the form of an internal flaw, like maybe self-confidence, or it could be external, like a human antagonist, or nature antagonist, or technology antagonist. Determine what your character wants and then create an obstacle. And then really focus on theme. Your theme's the moral argument of your story. It's about how you want your readers to be impacted by the story. What do you want them to be encouraged to do, to believe, or to be the result of after reading your story? You're going to publish this story for other people to read. So have your readers in mind. When you create these stories and then they go out into the world, they end up in the hearts and minds of your readers. And so how do you want them to feel when they're done reading your story? What do you want them to think about when they're done reading your story? You have the power to create that experience for people beyond the moment of creating your story. So if you write about a person who sacrifices their life at the end so that someone else can live, you're making a moral argument that sacrifice is the ultimate display of love. Is that the message that you want? Or do you want people to believe that loving someone means being willing to give your life for that person? Or maybe it means not sacrificing everything that you have, but finding compromises for them, or showing love in other ways that keep you safe and that are healthy. Theme isn't about being preachy, it's about grounding your characters in such a way that your decisions help other people and that make wise decisions about how they live their life. So the argument that you're making in your story about overcoming the antagonist, whether it's their self or a personal obstacle or a nature obstacle or technology obstacle, the argument that you're making in the ending is what's going to impact the reader. And you want to impact the reader in a positive way. So let me just be really clear. Don't end your story with, and then they woke up, because there's no grit in trying to solve that problem, right? And that's your job as a writer, is to help them solve the problem in an unexpected way that maybe they didn't know that they needed. That's your job as the writer. So just a quick little chart here that might help you. So if at the beginning you chose, icy fingers grip my arm in the darkness. So what does the character want? Maybe the character wants to be safe. Maybe they want to heal. Maybe they want to find love. So what's keeping them from this? Maybe there's an internal flaw about self-doubt. Maybe there's an external flaw like enemy or ghost that has their hands on their arm. And then the outcome. Maybe they discover that safety comes from rational choices. Maybe they face fears to heal. Maybe they accept love from an unexpected person. So that might be one way. So if you chose that prompt, as she walked along the street, the tiny dragon in her pocket stirred restlessly. Well, what does that character want? The one that's carrying around the dragon in the pocket, hiding it, right? Why is she hiding it? Maybe it's her friend. Maybe she doesn't want people to know because that the dragon will be hurt. Maybe she doesn't want people to know because someone's going to take away the dragon. Oh, it's her only friend. So what's keeping the main character from doing this? Maybe internal confidence, or maybe a person trying to hurt the dragon. So how is the character going to overcome these things and make the lesson? So maybe the character finds a friend who helps her return the dragon to the castle. Maybe she discovers the power of the dragon to save others. Maybe she discovers within herself a new friend. If maybe the story starter was, it was the last time I tried that, well, that leads itself to trying something again, right? You kind of already have a sense of what the ending is going to be, but maybe they try it in a new way. So maybe trying it was to be a singer, or to write for the newspaper, or go to a dance, or ask out a sweetheart. What's the fear? What's the obstacle here? Is it self-doubt? Is it another person? Is it rules in the family? Is it money keeping them from it? So in the end, what is the character going to discover? So you have to think about that. Are they going to discover that they could do anything that they love, even if you're not really great at it? Maybe that writing requires feedback. Maybe you have to take risks to show people that you care. There's lots of different things, but it's your job as the writer to think about that. So here are just a few, like a checklist for you. It's kind of overwhelming, but I just want to, this might be helpful for you, or teachers even, as you're thinking about your short story. But you can also use this for the personal narrative checklist. But, look at the beginning, names of characters, what's the lead, what's the setting, are you doing dialogue, are you doing action, are you going to start at the middle or start at the end and do a flashback, are you establishing what the character wants? In the body, you have the obstacles for the character, the tension for the character, the grappling, the trying to figure out. And in the end, the character is discovering or solving problems, and maybe it's not the way that they expected. So remember, this is 2,000 words max. It doesn't have to be 2,000 words. It could be shorter. Try dialogue, sensory language, play with simile and metaphor. The trees danced. The sun spoke to me. The flowers growled. You can use different kinds of figurative language in here as well. So play around with that. Get some feedback from your neighbors, your classmates, share your story, have some fun with it. Try a couple different ones and see how readers respond to it. Ask people, after you read my story, what was your takeaway from that? And is that what you wanted them to feel? Or maybe people read your story in a way you didn't expect, and that's okay too. So we're really happy that you're thinking about submitting a short story to our Young Adult Writer Contest, and I hope that these tips have really helped you think through how you're going to develop your short story, and we look forward to your submissions. Remember that those are due December 14th, 2020, and that your teacher must submit them. So make sure you get them to your teacher, I would say early December, so that they have time to look at it and give you feedback before they submit it. So be well, and check out the other videos for other tips to try a different writing topic. Okay, bye.